So yeah, we saw Seven Samurai. It was a 1954 film by Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah.
It follows the simple premise of seven samurai going to defend a village from raiders. And that lasts 3 hours.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's my sixth Kurosawa film, actually. I've watched several of them in the last couple of years with my brother-in-law. But I don't think the length is like a problem. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about it to me, is that so many movies come out today that are like 100 minutes. And I'm like, this movie drags so much. It doesn't need to be this long. Especially like movies that just edge over 2 hours. There's so many of those movies in that range that I'm looking at him and I'm saying, you don't need to be this long. But like, Kurosawa is very intentional with his films. That he'll have shots that, don't have dialogue or have something happening from like a distance and you're just kind of watching, but there's always some kind of dramatic tension or some character intrigue or some atmosphere that he's building. And I really like that about his films. Did you get that from it?
At first, when we were going to watch it, I thought to myself, oh no, it's going to be a 3 hour and a half hour film. The last time I did that was like watching the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. But with this, it actually didn't feel like a chore. Every single moment in Kurosawa's film, in Seven Samurai, is just purposeful. There's always a meaning behind every shot. There's nothing that I could really say was just there because of the fact of just being thrown in there. Like, everything served a purpose. While you could have cut some things out, you still could have. You could have made it less. Like, I know that when the film came out and it went to America, I think they cut out about an hour of it. But yeah, but I think that it adds a lot to the experience, and it never feels like a glorified, glamorous, modern-day 3 hour movie. Everything feels extremely grounded and real. Like, the entire time I'm watching this, I feel like I'm watching a documentary.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting way to put it. I think it's more dramatic than a documentary, though. Like, it still feels very real. Like, Kurosawa does a lot of good things, I think, with moral ambiguity and like shades of gray from a moral standpoint. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, our assumption is, these farmers are purely innocent. They're, they've been wronged by these bandits and they're just looking for justice. But then later we find out that's not the case at all. They actually have murdered samurai to take their stuff, and they have a level of deceit and of self-preservation, but also that these things are justified by the horrors that they've been through, and it knows that you're assuming that there's a black and white at the beginning, and then as it goes on, it shows you that there's not, and I really like that.
Right, it's very humanizing in that sense. This was the first film in a long time where I actually felt like that I could believe that this was real. Like, everything just felt real. It felt like that they just brought a camera back to the 1500s and then they just shot it. Like, all of the sets, the people, the people, they had like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extras in the background, and that just added to the experience. And everything, it was just, it just looked like that they just brought a camera there and it just breathed life into this realism. And also what helped that were the actors too, because all of the acting in this, while it wasn't kind of like the snarky kind of like things that you see nowadays with superhero films and all that. These were just grounded characters. There's nothing flashy about this film. It's all realistic. Even the battle scenes, they're not choreographed fight scenes. It's just it's actually kind of brutal to watch.
Yeah, that's exactly the word.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't want to even watch it because it's like, oh wow, this isn't glorified at all. Like, you see violence in a superhero film and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm getting a roller coaster ride out of this. But this one, it just feels like that you're really learning something about Japan's history.
Absolutely. There's like a horror to the violence, which is what we'd feel if we witness real violence. In real life, there isn't that roller coaster excitement in violence. It's a horrifying thing that people can do such horrible things to each other. And I think that's encapsulated well in this movie when not only is everyone kind of morally gray and they're all kind of fighting for their own survival, nobody's actually John Wick. Nobody's actually Neo.
Yeah, and because they don't use as much violence to its advantage, there's a lot more that goes into emphasis of these characters. So Kanbei, Yeah, the main samurai, the leader. There's a great character moment when he is shown for the first time, and there's some kind of thug that stole a baby and is hiding out in a shed. And so he decides to dress up as a monk and shave his head. Yeah, you get to see that he's actually intellectual, and you get to see that he's not just going to use violence as a means to get anything done. He's actually a smart individual, and that's another aspect of the film I liked, is that all the 7 samurai were differentiated. Every single one had its own personality. Sometimes they wasn't strong in some aspects, but you still knew each one. The biggest thing that I took away when I first viewed this was the movement of the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is just a master of just using the camera to create these just wonderful, gorgeous, beautiful vignettes within the film. He also uses his characters to actually move the camera so that they can change angles. So sometimes it'll start off as a wide shot, and then the camera will dolly forward, and then it'll tilt up, and then all of a sudden it's a close-up. And then the character walks away from it, and now it's like, it's this, he uses everything to his advantage, and it's just great. He just uses movement in every single aspect of this film to create just beautiful, gorgeous moments in it. I loved it. There's a scene, and I can't remember what scene it is necessarily, but I remember that there was a character, and it's a wide shot, and he's holding something. And there's great emphasis placed on the item, but not yet. First, it just shows the wide shot of the person getting the item, and then the person walks around, and then the camera follows the person, and then the person puts the item down, and it follows to the next person.
Yeah, I really love the art of shot composition in that way. Because when it's done well, the audience doesn't really think about it. That's that's a big part of what creates the experience. When the audience they don't think about it, they're just on the ride. They're just experiencing that, that path of art that you've brought them down.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes the camera is reemphasizing what is going on in the film. And sometimes it's a lot nicer when the film is just kind of helping you, when the director of photography is helping making what is internal external. Towards the end of the film, one of the younger samurai is in love with one of the townspeople, and then you see this fire that's just barely in this screen, but it's there. It's there, and it's just kind of like this emotional, just this emotional impact between both of them about how they just have this burning fire within them, the sensation, and you can just tell like it's helping us. It's helping the audience understand what's going on instead of just like if there's 2 people talking and then it's just the coverage is just for like a TV show where it's just like, all right, let's get a wide shot and then let's do an over the shoulder on you and an over the shoulder on you, and then that's it. Whenever he uses the camera, it's to re-emphasize the story of what's going on.
Yeah, it's like it is. I think it qualifies as an epic. It's the kind of experience that justifies the long running time. I can imagine. You mentioned they cut it down by like an hour for an American release back in the day. I mean, I can imagine that being done, but not in a way that doesn't diminish the experience. I think you probably cut out a lot of the stuff where they're actually gathering the samurai at the beginning, because it takes like an hour or so before they even come close to heading back to town. But there's so much building there that I think it would, like, I could see them doing that for commercial purposes, but I think it stands on its own as is. Kikuchiyo? Yeah, Kikuchiyo, yeah.
He's just such a joy to watch on screen. He just brings so much energy and liveliness to it, and he even has little character arc, and you just learn that he has a bigger backstory, and just a joy to watch him on screen. Just everything in this film there's nothing really I would cut out, because just like you said, it would diminish the experience.
Yeah, and that character, he's played by Toshiro Mifune, who is actually the lead actor in many of Kurosawa's films, and he's fantastic. I think my favorite Kurosawa film is Yojimbo, from what I've seen, and he plays the lead character in Yojimbo. All the Kurosawa I've seen holds up to today. Like, I think someone could watch them and enjoy them highly today. A couple are a little less so, maybe. It makes me think of, like, who today would actually do an intermission? The only person I can think of is Quentin Tarantino. But the thing is, his movies are like, oh my God. Okay, so to compare these 2 directors, I feel like Tarantino wants to think he's a Kurosawa, but he's so self-indulgent in a way that Kurosawa is not.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, because
he's a good filmmaker, but from a storytelling perspective, I feel he's very self-indulgent, and that I feel that leads to a lot of scenes and a lot of things that are just very slow and drawn out and nothing's happening. Like the first half of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is so ridiculously slow. It's only enjoyable if you're Quentin Tarantino, who has this like fetish for 60s Hollywood. Yeah, if you're that, you might love it, but otherwise, narratively, nothing.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is extremely long, and I felt its length at times. You know, it was just him flexing his muscles. Whereas here, Kurosawa is just so humble. He knows he's good, but he doesn't feel like that he needs to show off to everybody.
Right. His talents are in service of the story, not the other way around.
Also, just to say that there's so much that happens in the film, too, that just keeps your interest, because just new things keep on popping up that you wouldn't think about. So, like, when the samurai first get there, you know, the farmers have hired the samurai to come and help them, and then right before the samurai get there, they're all worried that their daughter's going to be raped. As soon as the samurai get there, they're like, yeah, we are the amazing samurai. And then no one comes out and greets them. Mm-hmm. And it's just an interesting conflict. And little conflicts and little things that you don't think about just keep on popping up throughout the film. The use of visualization is just great, because I just remembered one of the other parts that happened in it that I just loved was that he made sure that you understood the battle tactics that were going to happen in the film. So when the samurai get there, they're looking at the map, and then they're saying, this is the north, this is the east, this is the west. And whenever they went to a new part of the town that they're going to defend, they point at the map and say, this is where we are, this is where we are. And so it's telling the audience where everything is happening, so then when the battles actually happen, you know exactly where they are, and like, oh man, but what about the west side? What about the east side? It's interesting. Yeah. So many of the same things happen, but they're so different. You know, a lot of times they're inside of a building, and then they're in the forest, and then they're inside of a building again, and then they're outside of a forest, but none of it feels the same. Everything felt meaningful.
Another aspect of the intentionality of Kurosawa is the use of music. It's relatively sparse. There's not music in every scene by a long shot, and when it's used, it's impactful and it's momentous and it sets the moment. But then there's so many moments that it's not used where you would expect in a modern film you would have music of some kind to tell. Like, music is often used to tell people how to feel in some regard, but it can be a crutch, and it isn't used that way here at all. For instance, a lot of the combat doesn't have any music to it. It's brutal and real and immediate. And gritty, yeah, very.
I think that when you do use music, the reason why a lot of people will use music is to emphasize what is not there. In this case, there is so much there. There's so much emotion just within the cinematography and the acting that's being portrayed that it's fine. And then if you wanted to add some music just to like heighten it up a little bit, then that's great. And since he uses it so sparingly, it's fine. Now, if this was a film that was just really, really bad and I just didn't get anything out of it, and then all of a sudden they just threw music in there, it's kind of like that film that you were telling me about, Mac and Me, when they had...
Right. Yeah, that movie is a masterclass in inappropriate music, where we're like, the thing you're actually feeling based on the story is not what the music is trying to tell you to feel.
Yeah, and since the action is so downplayed, I never felt like that it overpowered how I cared about any of the characters. Usually at the very end of a lot of films, they'll have the hero, but they still look kind of like sexy dirty and like torn up, but it's like sexy torn up and all that. This one, like, they're in the mud and it looks just gnarly out there, and it doesn't look pleasant at all. Everything about it is just a very solid film. I greatly enjoyed it.
It's lovely to watch a film that doesn't have the benefit of all the conveniences of modern film, which is computers is a big one, obviously, where if you have giant crowds of people or you have gunshots or you have blood or explosions or things, you'll do a lot of computers to fill things in. Like, we don't need 200 extras. We're just going to have, a dozen extras. And then the big crowd of people will be, we're going to fill in with a lot of computers or something because it'll be far away. No one's going to care. That's what is done with a lot of modern films. And obviously you also don't have to shoot everything on location. You can just shoot it on a green screen. So they could make this today. They'd shoot it in a studio with like maybe 20 actors, and they wouldn't have any real effects or any, like, everything would be fake is what it feels like.
Right, because there's so much passion put behind this. He really wanted to tell the story. Like, back in 1954, you don't set a giant building on fire just for the sake of it. You know, everything in this really happens. It's great. Yeah, it's nice seeing a director that has a lot of passion and really wants to put something on the screen besides someone that was just hired just to make a film because, you know, profit. Where, like, Disney, they just hire people just to do their bidding for them. Yeah, just a solid movie. I would highly suggest it.
Well, who would you recommend it to specifically? Do you think just anybody should, like, some, you know, high school kid today should just, hey, yeah, go watch Seven Samurai?
I can't see myself first starting films and then getting into this. You know, I have to sit down for 3 hours and watch a black and white film with subtitles. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. But if you really do enjoy good pieces of work, of art in film form, I would say go for that one.
I hear that, I guess. I think my perspective is a little different because I'm really big on storytelling. That's what I look for in all types of media, whether it's video games or movies or TV or books. Like, it's really the storytelling, not the action or the I don't know, the aesthetics or the actors or whatever. It's if the story is told well, that really engages me. So from my perspective, if you really like good storytelling, I think anyone who does could probably appreciate this just fine. I think that the storytelling works today. And there are lots of old movies that I couldn't say that for because just the sensibilities they used when they made it, the way they told the story is either as boring or empty today by comparison. But this is really solid storytelling that resonates today. And that's what I look for in a movie that I would highly recommend to almost anybody because it's something that I think will be remembered through history. Like, if you say, look like 200 years from now, which movies are anyone going to remember from the 60s or the 50s? I think this would be one of them.
Oh, definitely. I think that if you enjoy cinema at all, I mean, I think it's something to watch. But I think that it's such a niche film. I don't see a large majority of people that I interact with wanting to watch this.
There were all those people, like, when Parasite got Best Picture, everyone's like, it's got subtitles. I don't want to read subtitles. Like, are these the kind of people you're talking about?
No, but I just don't think that the average movie-going audiences today would want to see something like that. Like, the people that see that just go to the movies just to see Star Wars, Marvel, or even just an independent film like The Goldfinch or things like that. I just don't see a lot of people wanting to sit down unless they really had a deep appreciation for film language, because film is an art form, and I think that if you don't appreciate art in that way, then you're probably not going to enjoy it that much. I mean, you can have an appreciation for it, but for someone to actually go down and sit through it, I think you have to have a good understanding of what film is, where it comes from, and you have to have just a passion for it to really get it. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a lot more people that would like it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think it's not a popcorn movie. It's not it's not the roller coaster action movie that you get.
A lot of people are accustomed to. Yeah. It's kind of like if you were to. Okay, I'll give myself as an example. I actually enjoy watching Charlie Chaplin every once in a while. I just find it enjoyable. But there's really not a lot of people, I think, that want to go watch a silent film.
That's sad. That's sad.
But yeah. I would highly suggest going to see Seven Samurai.
Yeah, this is a good way to spend one of your quarantine days where you can't go out and see anybody. So next time, we're going to talk about some current movies. Well, relatively current movies.
Yeah, maybe Cats or Sonic.
Why or, Spencer?
Oh, God.
We're going to watch both of them.
All right, so what you're telling me is that I have to put myself through increasingly horrible pain, not just by being in quarantine and being stuck in my desk for many, many hours during the day, because that's the only thing I have looking forward to, but to torture myself by watching both films?
Yes.
Well, all right, I'm sold on this. Let's do it.